First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast is back. Matt Baker and Nick Kowalski, as per usual. We're remote today. We're 2020-like today, remote, virtual, not inside the Go-Goat Sports studios, but as always, you can find us on the Go-Goat Sports platforms. Sakaris and Price, Rinkwide, Ray and Driggs, proud to be part of that family, as always. And we have a lot to recap. Yes, Nick, unless you win the Grey Cup, this type of podcast is coming. 8 out of 9 teams would be doing something similar like this, post-mortem, looking back on what happened. And, still a little fresh. We're recording this on Monday afternoon, so we landed about, 15, 16 hours ago. Late night return from Winnipeg. BC Lions season coming to an end. 28-20 loss in Winnipeg in the Western Final, but certainly a lot to be positive about as far as this season goes. Nick, what are your emotions like at this moment?
It hurt last night, and I know it was an emotional post game afterwards, and it hurts because this team was, as we've talked about all season, it was a special group, a close group, and they came close, but so close so far to ultimately the ultimate goal of winning a Grey Cup. And the storyline was there for the up and coming Canadian quarterback to take down the back-to-back champs, and they gave it their best effort, and that's including Nathan too in that final drive. Some pretty amazing stuff that he did, even though they didn't get the result they wanted. But it hurts. We've grown quite close to this group, and it hurts not ultimately seeing them close the deal off.
Yeah, and that locker room post game, I don't suppose I should be surprised, but that hits you. That just hits you, and we're not going to name specific names, but there was tears all around in there. Visually, I'm sure a lot of people saw it. Nathan Rourke, Brian Burnham embracing, but that was a pretty surreal situation. Just walking around in the immediate aftermath of that game. And, Nathan Rourke himself needed about half an hour to compose himself before he did his regular post-game commitments, post-game media at the podium, and does the one-on-one with Moj and Julio on the headset right outside the locker room. He just flat out needed some time, and that happens. Football's an emotional game. The one-and-done nature of the playoffs, I think, obviously makes it that much more painful when you're on the losing end. But hey, this team could have thrown in the towel. They could have quit. I mean, down 15 points early on. Real back-breaking sequence for me was the stop on third down before the Bomber, which led to the Bombers' last points of the game. A Mark Legeo field goal. It was a crossover. That happened late in the third, and the Bombers took the ball back into the fourth, kicked the field goal. But Nathan Rourke, he's like that boxer who goes down, but you never knock him out. Leads a long touchdown drive to Alex Hollins, but again, on the ensuing Bomber possession, they ran it up the gut with Brady Oliveira, and that was the story of the game. He averaged 6.5 yards per carry. Lions ended up getting another chance, but field position was a big storyline, and it made the field a bit more longer for them at the end, and ultimately it wasn't to be. But very
crowd too.
Yeah,
like that crowd that they Winnipeg had the Lions pinned deep on that last drive, and that crowd, Nathan said it himself, it was almost impossible to get calls in, and that's a hats off to a team that earned home field advantage, and certainly have some of the best fans in the CFL too, and they brought the noise and made it difficult in the Lions offense, and that's why you play those 18 games, right, to earn that right to be able to do that.
Yeah, you look at the math. I think Winnipeg 28-2 at IG Field, dating back to halfway through the 2019 season. I think it is, and the crowd, they fed off that crowd. They have the pass rush. The first play on that last series for the Lions was like an 8-yard sack. Makes the hole even bigger to climb out of. But Nathan scrambles on a 3rd and 2 to keep it alive, and you're thinking, okay, they just might do something here. They had a long way to go, and they had to score twice, right? It was an 8-point deficit. Even if you score, then you have to go for 2. But you know what? I think this team will be better from this experience. Winnipeg, until someone knocks them off their perch, they're going to be that measuring stick. And we're going to talk a bit about the 109th Grey Cup, Blue Bombers and Argonauts. Haven't seen any early lines yet, but I would think Winnipeg is for sure a touchdown favorite, I would think.
I
With
believe it
all due
opened at
respect to
5 points.
Opened at 5 points?
I believe I saw that today, yes.
Wonder if that line goes up. Maybe
I would
that,
imagine so.
like, part of what I've read and what I've heard, there's no concern with Zach Caleros in the leg, but I wonder if that had something to do with it. But anyway, yeah, Winnipeg, like we thought, very solid, very balanced football team, and I like to think that this Lions team has made enough noise this season that the expectations are going to be there going into 2023 and bring it on. But no doubt, as we're saying, this will go down as a great learning experience for this football team.
Yeah, and I really agree with you. And when you say that this team can grow from this loss, you can talk about how hungry you are to ultimately win a championship, but until you really get that close and get that taken away from you, you know the feeling, you understand the feeling, and that's where you can actually grow that hunger to try and ultimately get the job done and win a Grey Cup. And Rick and Neil have talked about this all season, but this was a year where they invested in a lot of year two players, and those year two players pretty much across the board got better in their second year in the CFL, and most of them, if not all of them, are going to be back next season, and they're going to be hungry, and they're probably going to be better too as they grow into their CFL career. So the expectation is going to be there next season, and it's a fun group that with a special core, and if you can keep that around for next season, you can only expect bigger and better things.
I want to take a moment here to sort of recognize, you mentioned Rick and Neil and the job that went into building this football team, the depth. We were without Lucky Whitehead, but Alexander Hollins in his position steps up, scores that big touchdown to keep them in it late. Keon Hatcher, the club's leading receiver, again, another one of those second-year guys that made that next step. Brian Burnham and Lucky, we've talked about, dealt with injuries various points of the season, and Dominique Rhymes emerges as the club's leader in receiving yards, over 1,400, CFL All-Star. So that, going in, sort of the domino effect of that, I think, is you look at some of the areas where this team will want to improve and maybe upgrade. I think as far as making this a destination again for potential free agents, I think that's positive as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, we've seen the culture that Coach Rick Campbell has built in this team, and a lot of the veteran players echo that culture now. And it's we've seen in the CFL these past couple of seasons that a culture, even in all of football, is extremely important to build a winning organization. And I think there was massive strides in the right direction this season. And if you, like I said earlier, if we keep that special core around, more players are going to want to be a part of it for this season and the upcoming ones.
Going back to the game itself, we heard all the storylines going in. We talked with Farhan Lalji last week, and he kind of brushed it aside and just had to chuckle. With all due respect to our friends in the media, the Winnipeg media in this case, post game, I as always take the coach and players to the podium post game. CFL, there's a bit more. CFL playoffs, there's a bit more pomp and circumstance around it, and loser goes first. So, all that emotional stuff in the locker room, I got to get guys to the media room right away because Winnipeg is going to want to go in there and get on with their celebrations. But I just have to, these guys, they're still asking Rick and the players about the weather. Like, just can never avoid it, right? Like, you're a full-fledged Winnipegger. That wasn't even that cold yesterday, I don't think.
I was telling you guys that too. It wasn't too bad. It was definitely not for it to be a factor in the game. I mean, from a personal perspective, my hands maybe were a little cold, but other than that, it was totally manageable. It felt like playoff football to me. And that's really all there is to it. It was the players, obviously, they had the heat warmers on the sideline. They had gloves. They had their pockets for Nathan to keep his hands warm. So yeah, that being a factor, I didn't really see that storyline and or being coming true, and yeah, I don't think it really played an effect as the player said.
Wasn't no bearing on the result at all. I mean, TJ Lee
Mm-hmm.
drops what should have been a sure pick six, and a couple drops by the receivers. No one person is to blame for the loss, and you have to credit Winnipeg too. But to think that the weather caused a lot of those miscues, and I even tweeted this in the second quarter. I think it was after the Sales interception that it was a drunk first half. It was a drunk kind of, for lack of a better term. I mean, the Lions get the gift with the special teams miscue by Grant and leads to the Pipkin touchdown. The Lions actually had a 1 point lead despite not having any first downs. That's how wacky and roller coaster type game that was, particularly in the first half. But of course, James Butler coughs up a fumble. Nathan throws the interception to Winston Rose with the team knock. They finally generated some offense, and then each of those drives in that first half that looked promising ended with the ball being taken away. But again, credit to the Blue Bombers. They're a championship football team. I can't. We'll get into predictions, and we're going to be doing some podcasts later this week. We'll talk about that a little bit more before we're done here on this episode. But I don't see any reason to pick an upset in this 109th Grey Cup. Would love to see it, but I just can't. But you never know. I mean, we've seen, you talked about it, Hamilton led in the fourth quarter last year, and going into 2019, Hamilton was Winnipeg now. They were a heavy favorite. They were 15-3, and the upstart Blue Bombers started this potential dynasty here by upsetting them. But yeah, hey, some of those guys, no locker room's ever going to be the same, too, Nick. Right? That's kind of another reality, and maybe that is a reason for a lot of the emotion in that room after Sunday's game.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, it was a close loss, and there were a couple plays there that if they're made, that could change the entire game. And it was a one score game ultimately, and had the ball in our hands to end the game and try and tie it up. So it hurts when you come that close. It hurts. It stings even more. It's probably worse than actually getting blown out. And but they gave their best effort against the back to back champs. And unfortunately, if you do make one too many mistakes, whether it's dropping an interception or taking a penalty or whatever it may be, that they're going to make you pay if you're playing in their barn, and that's what happened here.
All right. The post-mortem kept it short and sweet, and we'll be talking on First and Now in the subsequent weeks. There's no doubt going to be player news. We'll see what happens with Nathan Rourke as far as any possible restructure here before the new year, we hope. As mentioned, some players probably won't be back. We know they won't be back, but we'll see if a couple veterans have some decisions to make, but that just goes hand in hand with every offseason. And truly was a pleasure covering this team and being part of this club all this season. Head to bclions.com 2023 season tickets. You want to get first in line for the Grey Cup in 2024. All the info is there, bclions.com/tickets, 2023 packages. We'll take solace in this. The highest attended playoff game in the CFL in 2022 was the Western semifinal against the Stampeders. So bclions.com to handle all your ticketing needs. And while speaking of the Stampeders, a bit of a Monday bombshell in the Canadian Football League. We'll talk about that coming up next. Plus, get a very, very early look at this 109th Grey Cup matchup on First and Now. Back on First and Now, Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski. No guests today, just the two of us going back and forth, reviewing as much as we felt like reviewing on that Western final. Jokes aside, fun weekend all around in Winnipeg. Congrats to the Bombers and the Argonauts. We'll briefly talk about the game. We'll be talking more about it later in the week. Working on a potential cool guest to join us at the Lions Den in Regina. Not going to divulge it yet, Nick, as the first I'm mentioning this to you, but I'll wait till he confirms it. If he confirms it by the end of this recording, maybe I'll divulge it. But if it works out, it's going to be one of the more unique guests we've ever had. But should let our listeners know and their subscribers, Nick and I will be heading to Regina Thursday. We'll have the awards covered, see if Nathan Rourke comes home with Most Outstanding Canadian. The Lions Den will be doing a couple of recordings Friday and Saturday, noon to 1 locally in Regina. If you're around, you want to come watch us record this puppy, do so. Or if you have other plans, that's cool too. Lots of things to do at Grey Cup besides come see us, but the option is there for you. It'll still be fun being in Regina this week, Nick, although it would have been extra fun if we were getting ready to go on a plane on Tuesday with the team.
Yeah, you said it best. But I say come to Lions Den, no matter what. It's going to be a fun time there. But that's intriguing too. The guest thing, I'm intrigued now. You have my attention.
Well, still no follow-up email. So it's what we call a tease in the audio business. We used to call it the radio business. Trevor Martins, our producer, and I used to work in radio. We still do in some form, but I'm excited. If this happens, I'm excited about it. I hope I'm not overselling it, but we'll leave those details for now.
Nathan Rourke.
Well, we got him locked in. That's. I think that's in his contract that he must come on first and now whenever we're doing this in the Grey Cup City, right?
Yeah, 2 times in a calendar year and/or.
Hey, it's 2 more than a lot of shows that have been wanting them. Anyway, though, you and I were both in Hamilton last year. You were working with Bonfire. I was there on behalf of the Lions. We did the awards with Lacumbo and Williams winning, and we both were at the game in various capacities. For as scaled back as we were told the 2021 Grey Cup was going to be, I think that was still a very fun time. But this, Regina, everything centrally located, should be extra fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then the game itself, too, I think there's a lot of juicy storylines heading into it. Could really go on and on about it, and we will touch on it later in the episode. But, yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting down there. That province, that city, they love football, regardless of who's playing in the game. So it should be one big party all weekend.
Well, let's stick with that right now, and we'll talk about the Bo Levi Mitchell news before we wrap up. But you mentioned the storylines. I mean, number one right now has to be Andrew Harris against the Bombers, does it not?
Mm-hmm. And just even going deeper into that story, he mentored Brady Oliveira. I don't know about people in Vancouver out here if they know this, but Andrew Harris and Brady Oliveira, they even went to the same high school, not at the same time, as Harris is much older, but
right.
Oliveira is someone who's had to look up to Andrew Harris his whole life, and now they're not going to go head to head on the field per se, but it's running back versus running back, and it's a pretty awesome storyline to watch for that game. And yeah, Andrew Harris getting their revenge against a team that reports say that maybe we're trying to move on essentially and go towards Oliveira's direction. That's got to be at number one storyline.
Yeah, you mentioned it. They don't go head to head on the field, but knowing Andrew and the competitor that he is, dating back to here when he was trying to scrap his way on the Lions practice roster after being a territorial ad from the Vancouver Island Raiders. I think it was way back in 2009, his first Lions training camp in Abbotsford. And it's personal for him, right? He'll play it up as wanting to win with the Argos and not being about him. But deep down inside, I think there's going to be a little extra juice from number 33.
It's got to be, yeah. And if you say 2009 was his first training camp, we're at the end of 2022 year, and he's a running back where that position, players don't last 10 plus years a lot. So this could really be his final dance. And I'm sure he'd want to go out to a 3-time champ to end his CFL career.
Yeah, 4 times.
3 times back to back to back.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what I was getting at.
2011 and then back to back. Yeah. So 4th total, 3 in a row. Yeah, you're right. And full credit to him for overcoming that, torn pec muscle. That's one of those that's usually an automatic season ender at that point. And obviously first place and getting a bye gave him some extra currency to work his way back. And the Argos, I think they went with 4 running backs in the Eastern Final. But that's the 3-peat is the obvious storyline, but the Harris one, those are 1 and 1A in terms of in terms of storylines. And the Toronto Argonauts, they've been down this road before. Remember, well, the last two times they were in it against Calgary, 2012 and 2017, huge underdogs, both those games, right? Maybe more so in 17, but they came away with 2 wins. So usually the Toronto Argonauts, when they get to Grey Cups, they take advantage of those opportunities. And yeah, again, not going to expect an upset here, but you never know. I think this could be a fourth quarter game like we saw in the Western Final.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's a chance for Zach Collaros to also just keep growing his legacy in the CFL, but it's also a chance for, on the opposite side, McLeod Bethel-Thompson to prove that he can lead a team to a Grey Cup and he can be a winning quarterback in this league and ultimately get his first ring in this league, which would be a huge accomplishment for him in the Argos. So that's another storyline to keep an eye on too. We've seen at his best, McLeod Bethel-Thompson can be a pretty damn good quarterback in this league, but he's had trouble finding consistency at times maybe. But so on the ultimate stage, I'm interested to see what he can get done.
It's funny too to look back on our second game of the season and destroying those guys 44-3, I think it was. And then McLeod Bethel-Thompson in his post-game Zoom availability just basically said, hey, we're taking this head on. We got to look ourselves in the mirror. I think I'm paraphrasing it, but that's pretty much what he said. And frankly, Toronto recovered quite nicely, finishing first place again, and this time taking advantage of home field in that Eastern Final. Good crowd. Good to see BMO Field get over 20,000. I think they had to open up some additional seating in that upper deck that remains fully closed on that one side opposite the bench side. And hopefully it can generate some enthusiasm for Toronto in that market. Another cool nugget, what is this? Every year now since 2016, Jagarrett Davis is in the Grey Cup.
You beat me to it. I was literally just going to bring that up. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So 2016, 17 with 3 years with Calgary, 2 with Hamilton, now 1 with Toronto, right?
Mm-hmm. And he hasn't had the most team success in those games, so he's going to be hungry too to get the job done. I'm sure he's sick and tired of losing at that stage.
Yeah, I guess just has the 1 win in there with Calgary in 18, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's always storylines. There was going to be storylines if it was Lions, Argos, Lions, Alouettes, Bombers, Alouettes would have been some too. But 109th edition.
Brandon Banks, another guy, doesn't have a ring yet.
Yep. So, yeah, you know what? You never know. Maybe that motivation comes through. You never know. Yeah. Maybe you'll convince me to lean toward an upset by the time we get to the weekend. But it's going to take a full team effort on Toronto's side. And remember, the only time they met this season, the Bombers won because of a missed field goal. It was the week before they came here in that big win in July, I believe.
I believe it was a PAT to send it to overtime. And Boris Beatty missed it. And
you're
Boris
right.
Beatty style bombed it wide left.
Yeah. Knew it was a missed. It was a makeable kick, so it was probably a PAT. Yeah, you're right.
I believe it was a PAT. To send the game to overtime. So they've played close games. It was a Monday night, that game too. I remember it's all coming back to me now. I don't know why it was.
It was a Monday night before Winnipeg came here on the Saturday. Yeah.
Yes.
And so the sort of the unbalanced schedule, that was the only meeting between the two teams, and that was big when the schedule came out, or when I guess the schedule came out first, but Andrew Harris signs with the Argos, and then you look, Toronto's not going to Winnipeg this year. Well, now we're making up for that by seeing those two teams battle in the Grey Cup. Should be fun, and again, we're going to be in Saskatchewan, attending the game as fans, but leading up to it, some podcasts and some cool interviews. And love this time of year. Would love to be there with the Lions, but we'll make the most of it on our end. Some Monday bombshell news came out. You interrupted our marketing meeting this morning to talk about this. One of the biggest names, probably the biggest names, given the magnitude of quarterback and how important it is. You sign a good quarterback that could elevate your contender status. Bo Levi Mitchell's rights traded to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Calgary in return getting a 3rd-round pick in 2023 and a 5th-round pick in 2024. plus future considerations. Those obviously hinge on whether Bo actually signs in Hamilton. Calgary might get a little bit more compensation. But I don't think you do this move without a good sense that the player wants to be there. And I would expect not too long after the post Grey Cup media ban ends that you'll be hearing about Bo Levi Mitchell putting pen to paper on a contract with Hamilton. And this is kind of a no-brainer because the Ticats, we've talked about their need to upgrade, but big year, the Grey Cup once again in Steeltown next season. So the Hamilton Tiger Cats look to be getting an early jump on the off-season madness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of my first thoughts too, is that if Hamilton's making that move today, they're almost certain that they're going to be able to ultimately sign Bo Levi to a deal in free agency. But another big thought I had was he's not going to Saskatchewan. So that's something that we saw as a rumor these past couple of weeks, and that's looking like it's not going to happen anymore. And I saw Farhan Lalji also bring up that the Riders would have done the same exact move if Hamilton had not done it today. So yeah, Hamilton, early bird gets the worm kind of situation, and they're definitely the front runner now to sign Bo Levi Mitchell. My last thought too, and you brought up the CFL schedule a couple minutes ago. It has to be Hamilton at Calgary week 1, right? If this ultimately goes down.
Yeah, it would make the most sense. Yeah, it would make the most sense. And hopefully, yeah, and the fact that this move is happening before likely the schedule comes out, assuming it's going to be a similar setup where maybe not every team in the West visits every team in the East and vice versa, I would hope the Tiger Cats play in Calgary at any point this year. It could be, yeah, just like remember Russell Wilson going back to Seattle week 1 Monday night. We could do something similar here with Bo Levi, but it's funny. Like we'll forever be able to say that we saw Bo's last stand. Calgary put him in the fourth quarter of the division semifinal, and it looked like he might make things interesting until David Menard, I think, got him for a big loss, a big sack. So I'm interested to see. Always impressed with quarterbacks and their ability to play at a high level, well into their 30s. We saw Michael Riley here ultimately broke down a bit as far as injuries, but 36, 37, he was still playing pretty well. And, we all know what Tom Brady continues to do down south. Maybe his divorce prolongs his career. Who knows? Kidding aside, yeah, that's an intrigue for me. I mean, Bo Levi Mitchell was always going to keep playing, and good for him getting his job, getting replaced in Calgary, not hindering his desire and his hunger to win. And you know what kind of competitor he is. Whenever Hamilton does play Calgary in 2023, again, this is all assuming it gets done and Bo ends up signing. It's just his rights that are with Hamilton now until I think February 14th is the free agency period. He's going to want to stick it to those guys.
Oh, for sure. And I would say that he handled his situation this season with class. And when I say situation, him getting benched in favor of Jake Mayer. And he's got to be feeling good today because he's feeling wanted today by another CFL organization. So I've always said Bo Levi Mitchell is a great person to have in the CFL just because of his personality and along with his talent. Obviously, he's going to go down in the Hall of Fame without a question, but just his personality is good to have in the CFL. Yeah, he's a very confident guy, like you mentioned, and he's exactly what you want in terms of like your franchise leading quarterback, that kind of Texas born gunslinger. So I'm looking forward to see what his next chapter is in the CFL.
Well, our next chapter with the Lions, it's on to the off season again. Lions Den party in Regina. All the info at bclions.com. Noon to 1 Friday and Saturday. Nick and I will be there. The Grey Cup, the trophy itself, expected to make a visit, so we'll be there for that. Always a great celebration of our great league and our great game. Winnipeg and Toronto. We'll talk more about the matchup on the weekend in Regina. I'm on Twitter at BakesTakes84. He is at Nick_Kowalski. Nick with a K, no C. Kowalski, the regular Polish Eastern European spelling. Look it up.
Betcha.
The podcast is at First and Now. And hey, thanks to all you great listeners, great fans. Make sure to subscribe, rate, leave a review. Tell your friends about this podcast. It's an honor to be talking about the team week by week. We'll continue to do that here as the off-season news begins to trickle in now. And broadcasting from the makeshift Go-Goat Sports studio. Nick Kowalski was relocated, I think, mid-episode, but we got this done, and we will speak to you this weekend from Regina and the 109th Grey Cup on First and Now, the official Lions podcast.